So, first of all, thank you all for coming. Yeah. So, and I'm not sucking up, but my wife thinks this is the best place. Well, she can't be here for a different reason, but she likes here the best of the places we've been to, and I've probably been to like 50 or 60 or so.
Oh, how nice.
Excuse me, could somebody kill the lights? Thank you. Yeah, no, she likes this place. She wished she should have come. So, to those of you who don't know, my name is Bob Ainsworth. I was an accountant in my former life, and when I retired, you know, I really didn't know what I was going to do. I can't play golf all the time because I have a plate back here, and I wanted to teach, but they wanted me to teach during the summer, so that was no good. So, I always liked to read, never wrote. You know, I did college papers. My wife corrected them. You know, next year's our 50th. But yeah, she corrected all my papers. So I'd never written anything except at work, you know, long emails or something. But I sort of had the idea, well, maybe I could write. And so I came up with a couple of things that helped. One is there's a bunch of people I've worked with who I admire, who I think are just wonderful people and geniuses. And so I made them all my good guys. Matter of fact, Harry is a guy named Pat McGovern who started a company called IDG, put out computer magazines, did the Dummies books, and donated $250 million to MIT for brain research. And he started from nothing. He's just the smartest guy ever. And the people I didn't like in my life are all my bad guys. So I changed their names, but I have faces, I have attributes. I know why I thought they were really jerks. So that all sort of worked out that way. And then I decided I'd write about, you know, what I knew or where I could go. So my books are set on Nantucket, in Boston with Charles Ponzi, on the North Shore of Boston where my wife came from, and I can obviously go to the Gardner Museum. So this one came about because I wanted to do a sports fraud book. And I was going to do baseball, basketball, and hockey. So it was going to be 4 stories in one book, all Boston-based sports teams. And I'd written the first one, which is included in here. And then a friend of mine, just real short story, we were sitting and he's talking about his father, and he says, my dad was the last unindicted mayor. And I was just like, oh my God, what a great title. I mean, how do you come up with that? And so I went home that night and I wrote a synopsis of how I would do the book. I came up with some covers. And so I put aside the sports book to do that one because it was just like too good not to go after that. So that's the one I'm editing. His father was a sergeant in Chelsea, Mass. And he was like on the school committee or something, and the mayor passed away. So my friend's dad became the mayor, and he served, I think, 2 terms, honest as the day is long. But after he was mayor, the next 3 or 4 were all indicted. Chelsea was taken over by the state. They have a town manager, and they've never had a mayor since. So that's why he calls his dad the last unindicted mayor. But I couldn't write a book with his dad in the beginning, so I had to flip it. And I combined that with, I come from Marlboro, and in the 30s, there was a mayor who was indicted for selling a job. And he walked out onto Lake Williams, punched a hole in the ice, and jumped in and committed suicide. So I combined that with my friend's story, and it was like, this is good. I like this one. So this is a good story that I'm working on. Anyway, that's how I sort of came to do this. And you know, all the things I write are about fraud and murder, and there's no murder in this one, but all these stories are about people who cheated in sports, which sort of made, and so one of my kids, my third, is a very argumentative type kid. Just is. Should have been a lawyer or something like that, because, you know, I'll tell him something and he'll be like, da-da-da-da-da-da. So I've told him about this presentation, and he said, you need to have like a story to it. You need to have some sort of overarching thing. And I did this presentation yesterday for the first time, so this is the second. And so I started looking that up, and that's where I'm going to start in a second. But my first where I'm going to start is, what people can you think about or recall who have cheated in sports? If I asked you to, other than Pete Rose, because we all know that one, right? But he just got exonerated, so we'll put him up here. And yes, that's my best handwriting. So who else has cheated in sports that you can think about? Who? Pete Rose, yep. Who else? Yes. So, yep, good old Tom Brady. Brady did cheat, sorry. Next, any other things you can think? Joe Jackson with the black socks.
The Yankee that dated Jennifer Lopez.
Everybody's dated her. I'm sorry.
Anyway, steroids.
Huh? Yeah, so we'll put Belichik here. I'm sure that's spelled wrong. Yep. Yep, the point shaving at BC.
Oh, God, yeah, that's right. I hate that.
So far, I've got all of these in the thing. Yes? Armstrong. Yeah, he should. I'm sorry, he might be cute as hell, but he cheated. Yeah. Harding and, yep. Rosie Ruiz with the marathon. So part of the reason I do this, as I was developing this presentation, I would ask my friends, I was doing this thing and ask them to come up with ones that they could think about. And they gave me a whole bunch of good ideas that I really didn't remember or hear about. So far I've got all of these, so I'm looking for new ones. Somebody challenged me to find cheating in bowling, which you really can't. I mean, the only thing somebody could do would be to sort of wax the floor a certain way, but that would affect both players, so that was not really. Hockey, there's really very little cheating. I mean, they may kill each other, but there's not cheating. The only thing sort of they do is maybe the goalie will have pads that are a little too big, or the stick might be a little too curved, but that gets caught. Basketball, there's tons. Boxing, there's tons, but individual people. And so I won't put him up there for a reason, but I'll get to that later. But yeah, so she said Michael Phelps, the swimmer, and actually that was a technology issue, and all the swimmers had to change what they wore, and I'll go through that. But yes, that was a good one. Anything else? Oh, golf, there's tons. Golf, there's tons. I'm sorry. You can love Tom Brady all you want, but he cheated. Anybody else? Any other ones? Yes. Yeah, maybe that's who she was thinking of. So I'll just put that in general as steroids, right? That was just generally steroids. Huh? Well, I'm talking more about professionals. Huh? That was Brady. Yeah, that was Brady. Yeah, sorry, she's very offended. Do you have like his picture in your house or something?
Not yet.
Okay, one of the fatheads. Okay, so that's all you got. That's what you got. Oh, there's a whole bunch. I'll go through those. Yeah, I'll go through all those guys. Okay, so those are good ones. I cover all of those. So, sorry. All right, so what I'm going to cover is a little bit about why people cheat. Why do elite athletes, like all these people you've mentioned here, they're not us, right? They're special. They've been winners their whole lives, since Little League and high school and college and the pro. They're all incredible athletes. So why would people like that cheat? And why don't others cheat? Sort of. Sort of. Well, that's part of it. So why do people not cheat? And there's been studies about this. There's books and people who actually just study this stuff. And people who don't cheat, a lot of it is their character. That they just, you get to a point when you have to make a decision. And am I going to do this or not do it? And there's something in them that just says, I don't want to do it. It's past a line that I've drawn. And no matter what the gains might be, I'm not going to do it. So that's one. Second is their whole lives are not just tied up with their sport. That they have an identity in their head that's other than what they do for whatever it is, their sport. So that gives them sort of options and some perspective on things. And the third is that they have other options, right? Maybe they're intelligent enough, they've been to college, they can be a lawyer, an accountant, an engineer, whatever, but they've got some other way to go and have their life. So people who are sort of more balanced tend not to. But why do people cheat? One of it is financial necessity. And they did a study of athletes out of Kenya. And Kenya is an incredibly poor country. And something like 75% of the people, and they're all coming out of very poor backgrounds, cheated. And it was mostly because if they won $10,000, as little as that, their lives would be changed forever. You know, or you hear about high school kids who sign with a manager and get paid under the table so they can buy mom their house or whatever. And then they get caught and they can't turn pro. So they may have a financial necessity that, you know, my family is living in abject poverty and I want the money to help them. Okay, I mean, it's a decision, but that's why they do it. They've also probably gotten away with it till now. They've cheated in little ways. And it's like, well, I can do this, and, oh, I can do this, oh, wait, I can keep going. And it's just part of how they've competed, that they think they can get away with it. They also have certain personality traits that people who have become elite athletes are different than us. Okay, there's something about their personality and how they think that has gotten them to that level and will get them even further. So those things are called the dark triad traits, is what somebody named it. And there's research and books about this stuff. So there's three things in their personalities that sort of tend to let them go wherever they want and cheat as much as they want. So one is they're Machiavellian, right? You all know about Machiavelli and cheating and politics and planning and being deceitful and all of that. There's something in their personality that is that, and they don't mind it. That's just how they are. The second is they're extremely narcissistic. Their whole world revolves around them. That's all they care about. And they've found that's a high predictor of people who cheat. They're narcissistic. People who take steroids and doping have another attribute to their personality. They're psychopaths. Not murderous psychopaths, but they have that type of personality. And so they have no empathy for anybody else, that they'll take this stuff and it doesn't matter that they're going to win and take things away from others, that's just what they are. And that's a predictor of who will take steroids. So it's just interesting that people actually study this stuff, and many of them are ex-athletes, and they did or didn't cheat. And they talk about, what their decisions were like and what the people were like that they competed against, because, they're lining up at a 100-yard dash, right? And they're looking at people, they've all been working their whole lives. They've all got great coaches. But some of them they know have done that little extra to help them win. And in a 100-yard dash, they're like going at, 9.2 seconds? This is just like that. So they know even before they've gone off the line that somebody's cheating. Okay? And some people cheat because they know everybody else has been cheating too. Like the bike racing. That was just endemic of the whole European bicycling system. So anyway, and like I said, these elite athletes, that's what they're like. That's just how their brains are wired. So they're sort of predisposed to go in that way. So these are all the sports I'm going to cover. Basketball, baseball, football, racing, all types of racing. Men, women, horses, cars, yachts. The Olympics, there's been tons of cheating in that. Golf, it's not as common as you think, but there are a couple of good ones. Boxing, obviously. Technology. There have been 2 or 3 things where the technology, people weren't cheating, it's just the technology gave an unfair advantage. So they took the technology away. And then all of those sports, cricket, yachting, tennis, rugby, chess, bridge, ski jumping, card counting, and the game shows from the 50s. Right? Those were all examples of cheating that I'll just go through some of these. So some are interesting, some are unique in how they did cheat. A couple of them are kind of funny, but.
How about Jim Thorpe? Did he go on with that? But he didn't know.
I don't know about that one. I'll have to look. I know who he was,
Yeah.
but I don't know what he did.
He was playing, was it football?
Oh, but he was just paying and getting paid.
He was getting paid and didn't realize it or something?
Right, but he didn't cheat in his performance,
Right.
which I understand your point.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is sort of one of the most famous ones, the 1919 Black Sox. So you have to understand at the time, players had no rights, their contracts were controlled, they made horrible money, they had to take jobs in the summer. It was not like it is now. And the owners were cheap, and didn't want to pay. So some of these guys on this team decided, we're going to fix it. So he was the leader. His name's Chick Gandell, and he and a bookmaker came up with this scheme. They were going to make $80,000. Remember, this is 1919. That's serious money back then, okay? Those are all the people who were involved, and most of the names you won't recognize except Shoeless Joe Jackson, right? So that's where the phrase, say it ain't so, Joe, that some kid came up to him and said, really, say it ain't so, Joe, really, you didn't? And he did. He had helped throw the games. So Gandell got $35,000, the rest of them got $5,000. They were all charged and acquitted. However, there was a new commissioner. This guy, nasty looking dude, Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, and he banned all of them for life from baseball. He was brought in to clean things up, and he did. So they were found out, they were tried and acquitted, but then their life in baseball was over. Any of you remember him? I remember watching him on TV. His name was Dan Almonte. He was from the Dominican, but he was pitching for a team in Brooklyn. He was 14 years old, pitching to 12-year-olds. So imagine it like between 12 and 14, kids grow. So the rest of the kids are this high. He's 5'8", and the kids are scared to death because he's throwing the equivalent of a 102-mile-an-hour fastball because the pitching mound is closer in Little League than in major leagues. So he threw a perfect game. He struck out 62 of 72 batters. I mean, the kids couldn't even get the bat around by the time the ball was in the catcher's mitt. It was scary. Sports Illustrated uncovered that his records had been changed. He really was 14 and not 12, so the team lost all of their wins. The records were forfeited, and he went on to his life, but that's a pretty horrible thing to do to kids playing little, especially if some kid got hit with a fastball. Would not have been good. So all along, there's only a couple of things you can do in baseball. You can play with the bat, you can play with the ball, or you can steal signs. That's about it. So the first one is you do something with the ball. So people use emery boards, right, to scratch it. So anytime you make a change to the ball, it obviously affects the flight, and it does different things when it gets to home plate. And that's, the whole deal. So they use sandpaper, and they used everything including mud, sunblock, grease, hair gel, spit, and pine tar. All of those things they would apply to the ball. So the trick was, how do you do that without getting caught? And then a couple of them used thumbtacks to cut like a little hole. So here's some of the ones who were really good at this. Oh no, there's a different story. So this guy is Ray Chapman, 1920, Cleveland Indians. And he was at bat, and he was killed by a spitball because the spit was on it and the ball went like this. He's the only player, and the ball was thrown by this guy, Carl Mays of the Red Sox. That's the only on-field death in baseball. But because of that, they banned spitballs and tried to do other things. And they also introduced batting helmets, right, to give some protection. So it's obviously sad that he died, but they did do some things to try and make baseball a little safer. So here's all the guys who are, not all, some of the known cheaters. So you can see from the name there, right, Joe Necro, 88. So you can see here, The umpires are all looking at him, and what has he done? He's reached into his pocket and thrown an emery board out so they won't see it. So the umpires are here, and he's like, he got caught. So he was suspended for 10 games for using things to doctor up the baseball. This guy, Rick Honeycutt, used a thumbtack. The problem is he was a little clumsy, and he cut himself, so there was blood on the baseball. So he got suspended for 10 games. Gaylord Perry, one of the famous ones. He used Vaseline. He was thrown from a game. And then this guy you might remember pitched for us, Craig Kimball. So there, let me see if, no, there, I get it there. Right there, see that dark spot? So he had pine tar on his hat. So he would rub that, then the ball, doing his pitching thing, he'd go like this, and he'd go like this, and toss the ball. So he was never penalized, but they knew he was cheating. So now, if you watch, when a pitcher comes off the mound, the first base umpire checks hands, arm, hat, and the glove to make sure that they don't have anything on them. And it's just, it's just routine now. Pitcher walks off, the umpire comes over, checks things out. The other thing that happens, so if you can do something to the ball, the batters want some advantage. So what do? They cork their bats, which means you hollow it out and you put in either cork or rubber balls or styrofoam with the idea that the ball will bounce off the bat faster and go farther. So I was talking to my argumentative son this morning about this one. He said, no, it really doesn't help. Yeah, I'm not so sure. I think it did a little bit. So this is the Major League rule. So it's up to the umpire to find anything in the bat that has been altered or tampered with in such a way as to improve distance factor. So if the umpire catches you, then you're caught. So here's some people who corked their bats. Craig Nettles. He put Super Balls in there, like little Super Balls, right? So he got a 10-game suspension. Albert Bell, great hitter. 7-game suspension for corking his bat. Wilton Guerrera, 8-game. You all know him, right? Sammy Sosa, right? Supposed to be a great hitter. Yeah, that's his bat after it's split. And you see right there, there's the cork. So Sammy wasn't so good on his own. And then there's this one. So I grew up in New Jersey. I was a Yankees fan. My best friend was the Red Sox fan. So we would play Yankees and Red Sox. So, I grew up, I'm 72, so, late 50s, early 60s, all the famous Yankees. So here's a bat that was sold long after the fact, sold at an auction. And see right there, it's been corked. It's Mickey Mantle's bat. The famous Mickey Mantle had a corked bat. So that was, you're sad about Tom Brady. I'm sad about Mickey Mantle. Okay? So the other thing you can do is steal a sign. And by that means, that somebody tells the batter what the pitcher is going to throw. If you know a changeup is coming, you just sit there, wait on it, and then bash the hell out of it. Or if you know a curve, you know to wait. So knowing what's coming at you is incredibly important. So if you're on the field, like you're a runner at second base, and you can peer in and see what sign has been put down, and then somehow go like this for fastball or this for curve to the batter, that's legal. That's okay. But you can't. But the batter can't turn around and look at the catcher. That's illegal. And you can't use technology. So that's sort of the line they have. If you're on the field, it's okay. Otherwise, it's not. So these are the signs that the catchers put down. So, right, you have curveball, fastball, slider, pitch out. So knowing that what's going to happen is incredibly important. So the Houston Astros in 2017, they had a great sign stealing scheme. So here's the catcher. They had a camera out here that was monitoring what was happening there. There was somebody in the dugout, so they would transmit to them fastballs coming. Then the guys in the dugout would bang on a garbage can, which I can't believe nobody realized it. They would bang once for fastball, 2 for curve, whatever. And then the batter would know what's coming, and they won the World Series. Or you can do it the old-fashioned way. So this is a bullpen coach for the Philadelphia Phillies with binoculars, right? And then he transmits to the dugout, and they somehow transmit to the hitter. This is what's going to happen. So, yeah. So the Reds. I didn't know about this one. The Red Sox were caught in 2010. So what they did. So if you watch baseball a lot, like there's a camera going into looking at the catcher over the pitcher's head, and they would have somebody in the clubhouse watching the game, and they would look at the sign that the catcher put down. Then, on an Apple Watch that they were wearing, they would transmit it to an Apple Watch somebody had in the dugout, and then they would make some sign to the catcher. So they were caught, and it was sort of hush-hush, and they were fined, but I can't find the amount. So for all I know, they were given $1 million fine or worse. But this one, I didn't remember that at all. But that's another example of cheating, and yes, we do that in New England, just like everywhere else. So here's 3 other famous ones. So this one's kind of funny. So this is in 1898, the Phillies. They had somebody in center field watching the signs, and they had a wire under the field to the first base coach. So if it was a fastball, he would get a little electrical shock for 1. If it was a curve, he'd get 2. If it was a changeup, he'd get 3. And then he would transmit to the batter. And it worked. The only problem was somebody was on the opposing team was running up first base and dug their cleat in, and the wire popped up. And they got caught. So, and all that happened was they were told to stop doing it. So I was like, all right, whatever. Now remember, this is 1898. Baseball really wasn't as it is now. It was sort of a club game, so not big deal. 1951 New York Giants, somebody in center field had a telescope. So it's the same sort of deal. You look in, you can see what's going to happen. They had a buzzer going from the bullpen to the dugout, and then they would tell. So somebody would toss a ball in the air for a fastball or a bat in the air for a breaking ball. So they were, at least it's better than banging on garbage cans. And that's the World Series that was run by Bobby Thompson, right? The hit heard around the world. And then, here's the Astros, like I was talking about. They had quite a few serious consequences. So their general manager was suspended, their field manager, Hinch, was suspended, and their coaches, Alex Cora, right, because he was out for a year out of baseball after this, and Alex Beltran. Now they were let back in, but still they were out for a year. So the other thing, and this is great, some guys have been accused of doctoring the baseball field. So this was a father and son, and they worked for the Indians and the White Sox, and they would make the field, the infield, very, very wet, so the ball wouldn't scoot through, so the infielders could get the ball and throw people out at first base. The other thing they did was they would take the baseballs and freeze them, so that they were so hard, so they wouldn't go flying. You would think the umpire would notice a frozen base, but maybe by that time they were, a little defrosted. And then I don't know if you remember Maury Wills, great shortstop, I think, fast as anything. He had somebody change the batter's box. So there's that chalk outline that you can stay in. He had it moved forward so the curveballs wouldn't curve as much. So he had them doctor the batter, and he got caught and suspended 2 games and fined. So, there's all sorts of little advantages these people try to get. So here's some other cheaters. Anybody recognize that? Ty Cobb, exactly. So it wasn't exactly cheating, but he always went in with his spikes high. He sharpened his spikes with a file. So when he was coming at you with pointed spikes so that he would hurt you as much as possible. So sort of cheating. And then, of course, Pete Rose. And I think the guys from the 1919 White Sox, too. I think there were 17 people who've been let in who were out before. And I think it was all of them and Pete Rose. And yes, he did bet on his own team. Sorry, just like Brady cheated. Sorry. Yeah, I know. It's hard to believe. Okay, so now we'll get to basketball. Basketball is easy to cheat at. So there were a couple of point shaving. So that means you don't score as much as you should. So you either win by less or lose by more or just win or lose. So this one was kind of famous. Before the Final Four that we have now, the NIT was a big tournament. And this team from CCNY, they won both. They were the NIT and the NCAA champions. However, 7 of their players were arrested. They all got suspended sentences, and their titles were taken away. And ultimately, 32 players from 7 other schools, like Kentucky, I think Ohio State, UCLA. It was pretty widespread, excuse me, who was doing this. Second one, yes, somebody mentioned Boston College, Rick Kuhn. That's Hill, the bookie. So Kuhn and Jim Sweeney shaved points. Okay? Henry Hill put the plan together. He did not do any jail time because he ratted out all the other mafia guys he knew, and then he went into witness protection, but eventually came out. But Rick Kuhn did 2 years in jail. Sweeney got nothing. But that was a pretty big deal and damaged BC's reputation. And then this one, 209, University of Toledo. 2 bettors, 4 basketball players, and 3 football players all pled guilty, received probation. But that was pretty widespread when you're getting two sports teams. There have been crooked NBA refs, only 2 that I can find. So this is a guy named Saul Levy. He was a ref in the 50s. He was convicted on point shaving 6 games, so he would make calls that would influence how the game went. Unfortunately, he didn't fix all the games, and so some mafia guys killed him. They wanted him to fix more games, and he said no, and they said, okay, that's it. Maybe you recognize him. Who's that? Donaghy. There's actually a really good special on ESPN does a thing called E60. And Netflix has a thing called Unreported. And the other day I watched a thing on him. It was really interesting hearing him talk about it and the other people who were involved. So he was a ref in the early 2000s. He tipped off gamblers as to who was injured. So, before a game, he'd know, okay, you're hurt a little bit, you're hurt a little bit, and that would influence who would win. The other thing he knew was which refs didn't like what players or coaches. So they would have it in for certain guys. So they would call fouls on them. They would try and do things to piss off the coach. So he would let people know. He had a 75% win rate. If he said who was going to win, he knew. He bet on games that he refereed. It wasn't just giving other tips. And he did 15 months of jail, $500,000 fine, divorced, just out of baseball. Tough life now. I think he's doing real estate. So there have been a couple of people recently who they think have been gambling on games, and one is Terry Rozier, who played for the Celtics. And what he did was people would bet on he'd score 12 points a game. And then in the first quarter, he'd go, oh, my arm, my leg, I can't play anymore. So he, of course, wouldn't score 12 points. So people would win betting that he wouldn't get to his 12. He's under investigation right now. This guy did the same thing because he owed gamblers a lot of money. So he would do the same thing. He got tossed out of the league already. This is the one that's actually started my book. I love this story. So this guy, right, a little handsome guy, Jeff David, he was the sales exec for the Sacramento Kings. So, like the sponsorships where the names are, or the big, where they sit up top? The boxes, thank you. He was selling those things. Big money, right? Big money. So he sells some of those, and people sign a contract. Then he would send them a new contract where he had forged the CEO's signature that said, instead of paying in 8 years, you have to pay me now and send the money to a different address, which was going to him. And he took that money and invested in real estate, which he was going to flip and then pay the money back, which he never got to. Okay? It was uncovered after he took a job with the Miami Heat, and somebody found a file that had a different name and different addresses and all sorts of stuff. So he stole $13 million this way, and he was found guilty, 7 years in jail, and lost his family. But look at a nice, wholesome guy, smile. Yeah, you can believe me, not so much. So there have been a couple of college, not just a couple, but several college coaches who have been cheating. Any of you recognized him? Calipari, exactly. When he was at Memphis, he had people he rigged the SAT scores for Derrick Rose. And so all his wins were taken away. He had to pay money back and a bonus and got fired. And there's this guy, Clem Haskins, University of Minnesota. He had students write the term papers for his players. All right, so he had to give back a bonus, and he's never coached since. Calipari's continued to coach. Haskins never coached again. So let's get to football. Sorry, got to get there. So there's anybody recognize him? Who's he? Ron Meyer, right? So he and this guy, Bobby Collins, were coaches at SMU, Southern Methodist University. And in the 80s and 70s, they were paying players to come and play for them. Totally illegal. Right? I know now players get paid, but back then you couldn't at all. So they were paying people to come to, it was like they were running a professional team. So they got caught, they lost bowl games, scholarships, TV, all sorts of stuff. Collins never coached again. Meyer kept going. So it's funny how people sort of have different paths, but this was rampant down there. No, not bloody sock. What's stickum? No. Put it on your hand so you can catch better. So that's the sock of Fred Biletnikoff, great wide receiver. He had stickum on his sock, so when he was going to catch a pass, it stuck to his hand like glue and Velcro. Okay? The other one who was even worse, Lester Hayes. Remember the cornerback? Fantastic player. That's what his hands looked like. That's how much stickum he had on his stuff. So that if he was, a ball was coming and he wanted to intercept it, he could catch it. There's also been cases of, this is a recent one, they haven't finished it yet. So this guy was an assistant coach at the University of Michigan, Connor Stallions, and he filmed the other team's signals, just like Belichik did. And he paid friends to go to 30 other games of their future opponents and do the same thing. So he's been caught. They also think all these other schools were doing the same thing. It's pretty rampant. And they haven't finished with that yet. There was a thing on TV about him, too. It was pretty interesting. And then we have, oh, by the way, isn't the thing with his 24-year-old girlfriend the weirdest thing ever? Well, it is, and I listen to sports radio sometimes when I'm driving, and somebody called in and had a really good point, and they said, you can sort of laugh about it and all that, but if you look at it from a distance, this is sort of an example of somebody who's elderly being taken advantage by somebody younger, okay? And that this really may be like elder abuse. Like Belichik may really be under her control, and because he's given her, $8 million to buy real estate? I mean, there's serious stuff going on. Who knows if he knows, or he can combat it, but whatever. Anyway, so yes, he did. So he had one of his assistants filming the Jets right there. You can see him filming, and that was clearly illegal. So he got fined. The team got fined, and they lost the draft pick. Josh McDaniels, right, who used to coach under him, did the same thing when he went to the Denver Broncos. So it's just like he had habits and he just learned them and kept going.
Oh, no. Oh, yeah.
Sorry. If he was innocent, he wouldn't have busted up his phone and done all the other things. Anyway, you all know what he was doing. And by the way, lots of quarterbacks were doing the same thing at the time. It wasn't just him. He just got caught. And he acted guilty. Maybe if he'd confessed and said, yeah, I'm sorry, I screwed up, they would have let him go, but he fought it. So It cost him. He got suspended, the team paid $1 million, and they lost 2 first-round draft picks, which is serious in football. Then there's this one. This one's a little more dark. He's Greg Williams. He was the defensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints. He was paying his players to hurt the opponent. So, like, if you knocked somebody out of the game, you got $1,000. You broke a finger, you got money. He was paying his players to hurt other people. That's pretty bad. So he got caught and he was suspended for a year. But that's, I mean, one thing to sort of, scuff up a football but to do that, I mean, you got to be pretty dark. And the team lost money and he was fined too. This one's funny. So if you can see, so here's the coach. He's from the Jets. And here's a player with the football running up the sideline. And look what the coach is doing with his knee. He's like giving it one of these to blot. Now, you've got to be a moron not to know that the TV camera is on the guy running the ball. It's going to be seen, right? But this guy's like, no, like Woody Hayes did it, but Woody was sort of out of his mind by that time. So this guy, he was their strength coach, Sal Alosi. He tripped an opponent. He also told the other players to do the same thing, and he got fired by the Jets. But I mean, that's just like, yeah, really, how can you not think that? Okay?
How about the referees with Mahomes games?
No, that's a whole different deal.
Yeah.
So any of you recognize him? Another Patriots coach,
Yes.
Chuck Fairbanks. Okay, he altered transcript when he was at college of his students, and so his school lost the ability to go to bowl games. And he was also suspended. He was with the Patriots, and he accepted a job with a college coach. So he got fined for that. So the Patriots don't have a good track record about their coaches. Okay, now we're going to get to racing. There's tons of, it's going to be easy. So we'll do car racing first. So this is an old one, but you'll recognize the name. A.J. Foyt, right, famous. Yeah. Darrell Waltrip. So in the same race, they were accused of using nitrous oxide to boost the engine. They said they didn't know about it, that it was their crew chief. They were fined a little bit and their times were thrown out. But this was back in the 70s, so NASCAR wasn't what it is. So they were only fined a little bit. And they said they didn't know, but whatever. They always say that. This one I didn't remember until somebody told me. Any of you remember the soapbox derby thing? Okay, so that's what a car looks like. And how it works is they're on a hill. All the cars are standing there. This thing here goes down. There's a piece of metal holding the cars. They lower that, and the cars by gravity go down the hill. So in the beginning of the race, all the cars are even, right? Because they're just let go. So this one car is gaining on the other cars ahead of time. And it's just like that can't be because they're all just, gravity's doing what gravity does. So what had happened was this kid built his car. But then his uncle said, we're going to put in an electromagnet in the front of the car. So here's the magnet right here. And this thing is metal. So when this goes down, the metal will go like that in the magnet. And how they operated it was the kid would put his head back. The switch was back here. So when he had put his head back, the connection was made, then the car would be propelled forward. I know, that was a lot of work. Pretty ingenious. So they figured it out and they tossed him out. But even soapbox derby, there's no, what are you winning? I don't know, pretty bad. Pretty bad. Horse racing, this one's simple, right? Everybody knows this. So you're going to recognize him, right? Bob Baffert. I think he's in the Hall of Fame for racing. He won 6 Kentucky Derbies, 8 Preakness, 3 Belmont, 2 Triple Crowns. However, the 2021 Derby that he won, his horse was drugged. With all this success and money and everything, he's drugging his horses. Now, he had been doing this his whole life, just not caught all the time, but this was a thing that had been going on for him since he started. So he was banned from Churchill Downs and other places. This is pretty telling. 36% in this 2-year period, 36% of the horses in California that died from a cardiac event were his horses. So there's something about what he puts in his horses that's killing them. They didn't do anything, they're not horses in races, but clearly something is going on. Right, the Winter Hill Gang? And Whitey. So yeah, they were fixing races at Suffolk Downs all the time. That's no great secret. This one I love. So this is a race in Louisiana, and it's being run in a dense fog. And this is, the jockey on the horse. They start the race. All the horses take off. They go into a fog bank. He stops riding. All the other horses keep going. He stops. He goes back around to before the finish line and waits. And when he hears the other horses coming around the bend, he starts up. And he won by 24 lengths. So he was clever, but not really clever. Right? And so he just did a U-turn and then ran that way. So, they figured it out. But still, it was clever. I mean, at least you got to give him that. It's not like he hurt the horse or anything. So this guy was an Irish millionaire. He bought two look-alike horses, named them the same thing. In trials, he would run the slow one. In the races, he would run the fast one. So he'd have long odds because of the slow horse, but then he'd win because of the fast horse. But they caught him. They knew what he was doing, and he'd give the money back. But again, at least he wasn't harming the horse. He was just sort of being clever. In Australia, this one was good too. So somebody buys two horses that look alike, except for some white on one of the horse's legs. And the slow horse has the white on his leg. The fast horse does not. So he runs the slow horse in the trials, and then in the real race, he runs the fast horse, and he paints the leg. Except the horse is sweating. So what happens to the paint? Right, the paint's running off his leg. Again, clever. You didn't hurt the horse, and okay, fine. You got caught. These two guys, this was a high-tech one. This was the Breeders' Cup. So one guy worked at the company that calculated the winnings of races. And they had something called Pick Six. And the other guy would make a bet. And then the guy who worked for the company would change who won on that guy's ticket. So like the guy had picked horse A. Horse B won. He would change it from A to B. So this guy, his ticket would win at the betting scandal. They bet too much money. They won too much. It was obvious what they did. They got caught. But this was sort of a behind the scenes, we're just going to change the technology and see what happens. So they both did jail time. I think they did about 3 years.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Rosie Ruiz, right, took the trolley or a car. Now, but it turns out she cheated well before this. To get into the Boston Marathon, you have to run another marathon to qualify. She had cheated in the New York Marathon. So she had run 2 minutes and 56 seconds to qualify. It was under 3 hours. When she did the Boston Marathon, she ran 2:31. She was better by 25 minutes. Nobody's better by 25 minutes. They knew that. So, here's her. But she took the crown. She took the money until they figured it out. And then, she was a cheater in both of them. But that didn't stop her. She later got a job as a bookkeeper and embezzled money. So it was in her DNA to just cheat and steal. That was her thing.
A week in jail.
Oh, yeah, no, she didn't, yeah. Serious.
When she jumped into it.
Now, this one's kind of interesting. This was the 04 Olympics, and this guy won, but then he's disqualified because he rode in a car for 3 miles. However, he apologized, and they reinstated him, and he won the Boston Marathon. He was a good runner, just his brain went crazy one day, and he did something he shouldn't. But he was a very good runner, and he kept on running, and good for him. He apologized and kept going. So now we get to the Olympics. There's tons of, this one's kind of, I like this one. So this guy, He's in the pentathlete. He's a pentathlete. And one of those things they do is fencing. So I hit you with my sword and the buzzer goes off and I get a point. Well, he had a wire in his sword that when he wanted a point, he would like hit his pocket and I get a point. Well, he hit the thing and he didn't hit the person, so he went like this. So he's getting points when he didn't touch anybody. So they clearly knew that he had done something wrong. Yeah, there was something wrong. It was pretty obvious. So he got yelled at by Leonid Brezhnev. He was disqualified, never did the Olympics again, and ended up just driving a cab. So he was trying to do this for the glory and the money, and then, not so much. This was really warped. So this is the Spanish intellectually disabled basketball team at the Paralympics. No. Most of those people were not intellectually disabled. They were just regular people. The coaches lied. They put people on the team who shouldn't be qualified against people who, had issues, and they should be competing against people who were like them as opposed to this. So, they lost their medals. The coach got fined, and that's just nasty. Yeah, that's nasty. So this is the Chinese gymnast team. I think the limit is you have to be over 16, if I remember right. They were using 12 and 13-year-old girls who are obviously able to do things that girls who are bigger can't. So they lost a ton of medals. This is the French ice skating judge. So she and the Russian judge conspired to vote so each other's teams could win medals. So she voted nicely for a Russian pair who made mistakes, and he did the same for the French. And they were caught and they were never able to coach again, and that was the end of her being a coach at the Olympic level. Oh, it's better. I don't know if any of you remember this one. 1972 Olympic basketball, U.S. against Russia. The U.S. men had never lost. We always won gold medal. And at the end of this game, the Russians were given 5 seconds, and 3 extra inbounds plays until they finally scored and beat us 51-50, and they won the gold medal. So somebody was paying somebody off to give them all these extra tries. So, okay, finally you win. Yay, you get the medal. So, golf is pretty simple. And it's supposed to be an honest game. Players, men and women, call penalties on themselves all the time, even if it costs them a tournament. I've seen that. Except this guy. His name is Patrick Reed, the U.S. golfer, really good golfer. He went, you guys know what the live golf is? Okay, so he went from the PGA over to live. In college, his teammates voted to kick him off the team because they knew he was cheating. He also stole money from their lockers. And not a nice guy. So he improved his lie in the sand trap. And there's film, there's film on this stuff. So as he goes back with his backswing, he swept away the sand so that when he came through to hit, there wasn't a clump of sand behind his ball. Illegal. But they caught him, fined him, a couple of penalty shots. He also, this was a weird one. So there's a rule called the embedded ball. So if you hit a golf ball and it lands in mud, you're allowed to take it out and put it on regular ground and hit. Okay. He hit a ball, it hit, it bounced, then went down into deep grass, and he said that was embedded. If it bounced, it can't be embedded. There's not enough force to. But he still said it. They let him do it. It was on TV. But it just tarnished his image even more that he's just an out-and-out cheat. Then there's this guy, and this one's really stupid. So you see where the mark is and where he's putting the ball? He's putting the ball like 3 inches ahead, so he's closer to the cup. So he's a UK golfer. He was banned for 20 years for doing that. It was just really, it's just stupid. Now, this is sort of on the Tom Brady level. Oh yeah, Phil Mickelson is a massive gambler. So is his wife. And he owed somebody a ton of money, and they gave him a stock tip. And he bought the stock. With the extra profit, he paid off his gambling debt. Now, he was never charged by the Securities and Exchange Commission. He should have been, but he wasn't. But he had to give up the $1 million, and so that didn't pay off his debt. But Phil is not as clean as everybody thinks. He also did this. So do you guys know the U.S. Open in golf? Okay, the U.S. Open is the hardest tournament out there. They make the greens as fast as this. Balls just roll. Okay? So Phil was playing. He wasn't doing well. He hits a putt, and instead of stopping by the hole, it's like 5, 10, 15 feet past where he wanted. So Phil runs after the ball and hits it before it stopped. So here he is running, getting there and whacking it before it goes off the green. Now, he knew he wasn't going to win. He didn't really care, and they gave him a 2-shot penalty. But it's sort of funny if you watch the YouTube. He's like scampering after the ball, but he knew, he was sort of laughing. He knew what was going to happen. But it was just sort of, that was a little more tongue-in-cheek than the other one. This was a great golfer from the 70s. She was suspended a year and fined money for improving her lie and not marking her ball right on the green. 27 of her fellow players signed a letter saying she was a cheat. Not good. Then there's this guy. This one's sort of an okay story. So he's trying to make the cut in the Ottawa Open, and he changed his scorecard so that he could make the cut. The cut means you play on the weekend and you can win money. If you don't make the cut, you make 0. So he changed the score by a stroke. He makes the cut. Oh, but he apologized. He confessed, said, I screwed up, I was just an idiot, and they let him keep playing. So, there's something to be said for just coming clean. Sometimes you get treated, and given some benefit for that. This is Vijay Singh, right? World-class player on the PGA Tour, the Senior Tour, or what they call it now, the Champions Tour. But when he was young at the Indonesia Open, he also changed his scorecard to make the cut because his career was just going nowhere. And he got banned from that tour indefinitely. But he eventually made his way back and has won majors, and great, great golfer. He just had a bad day, I guess. So here's some other golf cheaters. So here's the golf ball. So you see it's sort of teed up in a sand trap. So the odds of a ball being teed up on sand is like less than 0. So this is Bernhard Langer. Wow. Yeah, I know. World class. Probably the best of the Champions Tour players. He was playing last December in a father-child, so a son or daughter, and he and his son were playing against Tiger Woods and his son on the last hole, and they're tied. And Bernhard Langer's ball was in the sand trap. So he made himself a tee, and then he hit a driver, right? So a driver is your longest club. Technically, that's not against the rules. In the type of tournament they were playing, you can slightly improve your lie, like you can move the ball a little bit. You can't build a tee to put your ball on, but they let him get away with it because he wanted to beat Tiger Woods. That was his only motivation. He wanted to beat Tiger, and they let him do it. Speaking of Tiger, do any of you remember this? Yeah. In the Phoenix Open? So what happened? Go ahead. Right. So in golf, if there's something behind your ball, like a small pebble or a twig, you can move that stuff, right? So you can swing. But you can't move a boulder. Tiger's ball was behind a giant boulder, like this big. He didn't ask the guys to do this. So his ball is sitting behind the boulder. He's clearly going to have to hit sideways and lose 1 stroke or 2. And all of the fans get behind the boulder and roll the boulder over so Tiger can hit a ball. It's hysterical to watch it. He didn't, instigate this. It just happened. They changed the rule after that. You can't move boulders anymore, and you can't have fans help you. But it's kind of a funny one to watch if you watch it on YouTube. And you can see Tiger's sort of laughing. It's just like, really, you're going to move a boulder for me? Boxing is, since ancient times, in the old Olympics, have always been subject to cheating. So this guy is Eupolus of Thessaly in the 98th Olympics, 400 years before Christ. And he paid his opponents to let him win. And they all got fined. So you can go back as long as you want, and you're going to find people who cheat. This one's a little worse. So this guy, his trainer removed some of the padding from his boxing gloves. So you're hitting people more with, because they tape the knuckles, you're hitting people with this instead of padding. And his opponent lost his eyesight. and ended his career. And this guy went to jail for that. It was assault. Then there's this, right? Mike Tyson biting the ear. He did it twice in one fight. He said it was because he was getting head-butted, but that's not an excuse. So twice he took chunks out of Holyfield's ear. And he's, if you see Holyfield now he's dead now, but you see he's got a little hole there. So Tyson was disqualified and he was fined and lost his ability to fight in Nevada. Then there's this one. So this was before he was Muhammad Ali. He was Cassius Clay. And he was fighting, so he was coming up, and Sonny Liston was sort of the experienced on the way down fighter. And they fought first down in Florida, and something was on Sonny Liston's gloves, and nothing nefarious, but it got in Ali's eyes. And he won the fight, but still something was going on. So they have their second fight up in Lewiston, Maine. And in the first round, Ali throws a punch, and down goes Liston, except he never touched him. You watch the thing, it's just like, whoosh, whoa, down he goes. The fight was fixed. But, that led to this famous picture, right? That is Ali over his opponent. He's knocked him out. So somebody was on the take. I'm guessing it was Sonny Liston. But, yeah, that was the punch that never happened. So here's other sports. Massive scandal. So the sumo wrestling, there's tiers. So they have to make money, you have to get into the upper tier. And so they pay their opponents who are lesser to let them win so they can keep all their status and their money and all the other stuff. And it's just massive scandal over there. Cricket, it's just like baseball, except more boring and longer. But this guy's bat, he threw matches so his friend who was a bookie could make money, banned for life. These two guys scuffed up the cricket ball in Australia, and they were suspended for a while. So it's just, the same things you try and do in baseball, they do down there, just differently. This one's odd but sort of sad. So this guy was in a around the world race, and you have to report where you are, and he reports that he's far ahead. Somebody who was behind him took enormous risks to catch him, and his boat capsized and the guy died. And this guy was so distraught over that he committed suicide. So, cheating can have other consequences other than money and things. And it's sad on a whole bunch of parts. Larry Ellison, right? So the America's Cup, there's a lot of rules about what your boat can be like and weight and that bulb on the bottom and all that stuff. So his crew put different weights in their boat so they would go faster. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but he lost a couple of points, which was, I guess, a big deal, and fined $750K, except he's worth like $8 billion, so he didn't care. And it's fired his crew, but, he still races. Tennis, this is kind of blows me away. So this guy was Armenian, and he got a bunch of money from financiers, and then he would pay that to gamblers. And so he had a whole stream of gamblers all around, 1,600 of them, and he would send them money and tell them who to bet. These were all lower level matches, like small tournaments, first round, that kind of stuff. So then he would tell the players what to do, and this guy recruited the players. So it was like this big, complicated thing. And he made $9 million on it, but they caught him, and then he ended up doing 5 years in jail. He was also fixing soccer matches. So he just liked fixing sports. Yeah, it was. It was very complicated. Smart guy. So this... I'll do that. So this is a rugby team in the UK, and you can't substitute out of rugby unless you're bleeding. So they had blood tablets put on their arm so they could substitute their players. So they got caught, and the players were suspended, the director of rugby, the physio, the doctor, and the club chairman had to resign. Caddyshack. Or, oh, my arm, it's broken. Bring in the other kids. So I just think that's hysterical. So, right, Rodney Dangerfield was Al Cervic, and Ted Knight was Judge Elihu Smales. The doctor, he was Dr. Beeper, of course, right? And then there's Chevy Chase over here, and then the kid was the famous Michael O'Keefe, who, you know, saves the day. But I heard the blood thing, I was just like, that's exactly like Caddyshack, so, yeah. This one's pretty funny. So these guys were in a bass fishing contest, which is actually big money. Like, you win big money for winning, you know, fishing contests. So they win, you know, they get a big check, yay, except they were putting weights into the fish after they caught them. So, but a fish this big can only weigh a certain amount, and their fish were weighing like way more than that. So they got caught, but, you know, they ended up going to jail. And they had some expensive boat that they won, and they had to give that up. So, you know, they're cheating at bass fishing, for jeez. So you know this one, right? Tanya Harding. You know, and Nancy Kerrigan ended up doing fine, Hall of Fame, won medals, and Tanya's doing reality shows. People cheat at chess. I won't go through all of this, but they have ways of looking up moves, like they're on a computer, or they have somebody in their ear, or they go to the bathroom and get at something. So people cheat at chess just like they cheat at anything else. This one is wild. Actually, there was a really good documentary on this. So bridge is a big-time sport, and you win a lot of money. So how they do it is, like, this guy here and this guy here are partners, and this guy are partners. And they use this board there to slide it under that divider to show what they've played. So you can't use hand signals to cheat. What these guys were doing was they would slide the board a certain way, like straight or at an angle or this way, to show what they were going to play on the next hand. And they had to analyze thousands of hours of them playing, but they were cheating. And they got thrown out of the Israeli Bridge Association, lost all their money. Those two guys there. He was, Lotan Fisher was sort of the brains, the other guy was not. This one is weird. This one just happened. So in ski jumping, right, you go off, you fly. So what they did was they put a little bit of extra material between the guy's legs. So it would do just a little bit more aerodynamic, so they would fly just a few extra yards. But a couple of extra yards is a big deal. And they were caught because somebody found them sewing the stuff in and took a picture and sent that out. But this is really ski jumping? And Norway, I mean, those are supposed to be honest people up there, and they're not. Anyway, people were disqualified. Because it's judged. There's judges, so the judges get bribed, right? So there's money and sex and all sorts of stuff. Irish step dancing. This one's not illegal, but funny. So do you remember, there's a movie about this? The card counting? Okay. So real smart guys from MIT. This guy here, Masser, he started putting a team together, and they would do card counting and go to the casinos, and they did very well. He won 4 times his money. Then this guy was a Harvard Business School guy, and he won 35 times his money. And this is the team. So that's the group of kids who were sent out to all the different casinos. Eventually, they were just tossed out of the casinos because they won so much money, and it wasn't illegal, but, you know, clearly the casinos don't want to lose money. So that was the group. So that was card counting. Right? The 3 shows, 21, The Big Surprise, and the $64,000 question. Yeah, this is out a long time. You know, they're giving the answers to people. Nobody went to jail, though. Now, and so we were talking about steroids. So the big one is Balco, Bay Area Lab Cooperative, which supposedly just sold supplements, regular old supplements like you buy at CVS or whatever. But theirs were special supplements. And this guy Victor Conte he owned that company, and they gave out something called THG, or the clear, or the cream, and that's what players applied to put their steroids in their body. Oh, he was also in the Tower of Power band, which is odd. Anyway, he did 4 months in jail. That's his chemist. Clearly, he was taking the steroids. And this guy was the distributor because he was a trainer for some of the athletes. Marion Jones, right? Great runner. Won a bunch of Olympics, stripped of all of her medals because she was one of the clients. This was her ex-husband. They caught him before the Olympics and threw him off the team. He was a shot putter. This guy, so a lot of this is on the speed races, 100, 60, 100, 400. So this guy, Tim Montgomery, he won championships. He was a sub-10 second guy. He lost his medal. This guy was a UK runner. He was the first one caught on that stuff, and he had a lot of 2 years from competing, banned from the Olympics, stripped of his medals and his money. So quite a bit. Barry, oh my God. Wait till I show you the pictures. Jason Giambi. Remember, he played for Oakland. These were all California people. And Bill Romanowski was a BC guy, but he played for Oakland. All these guys, I mean, you see them, their heads are just gigantic. In the 70s, Ben Johnson, 100 meter, he lost his medals. And of course, Lance Armstrong, 7 Tour de France's, and always said he was innocent until one of his teammates said, you're not. And so he lost his medals and had to pay $15 million in penalties. But he still had a lot of money, but yeah, he was not good. So far I'm covering most of your people. So here's Barry Bonds before and after, right? Now he was a great hitter beforehand, and he's just, he went for this. He was convicted of perjury, but not of taking the drugs. Sammy Sosa, the guy who corked his bat, also bulked up a little bit. He sort of confessed-ish. Mark McGuire, right? The Hulk. He confessed. He said, yes, he was doing it. And then our very own Roger Clemens, who went from a regular-looking guy to the Hulk. And he was found not guilty. He was put on trial. But what's happened to all of them? None of them are getting in the Hall of Fame, no matter how good they were. And they were good. Well, at least Bonds and Clemens were good. They were worthy even beforehand, but they're not getting in the Hall of Fame. And then there's Russia as a country, had a whole scheme. So they had 51 medals taken away, all these urine samples, and those are all the sports that they were cheating on, right? Everybody coming out of Russia was cheating. Everybody. And they were banned from the Olympics. So remember I said some things were technology. So this shoe gave people an extra bounce. It was by Nike. And some runners who were using it were breaking all sorts of records. And it was because of the heel and how it bounced and just let you. So they banned that shoe. It wasn't the runner's fault. It was just something they could use. There's the Stickum that I was talking about. That was banned in '81. That was pretty. Oh, by the way, the people who hated the Stickum were the quarterbacks. Trying to throw a ball that's sticking in your hand, you go like, doesn't go anywhere. Metal bats. So they're okay for little leaguers because they don't hit that far, and they use them in high school and some college, but clearly banned from the pros because you get hit with a ball coming off that. That's not good. This is the swimsuits. So these guys, it was called a speed laser racer. It reduced drag, it was slippery, and it put like little air pockets inside the swimsuit. So it kept them a little more buoyant. And they set 23 world records. And it wasn't the athletes, it was just the equipment they were using. And they could see there was way too much of a benefit. So they said, you can't use those anymore. And you have to have a certain amount of skin exposed. So, you don't have air pockets and everything. So it's just technology being banned because it was changing the sport. So all these guys, and there's Glenn Davis, played for the Celtics. So that's the NBA. And all these guys from the NFL all participated in a healthcare scam. So a doctor would say, oh yes, I need to do a test. It's going to cost $1,000. I'll bill the NFL. Well, they didn't need the test. The players got money, the doctor got money, and they just ran this big scam on both of the healthcare systems. So it was both basketball and football. And, oh, just as I could have 10 slides on this, but just a couple of examples of ex-athletes who've turned into crooks. So Irving Fryer, right, Patriot. He took out multiple loans on one property without telling the other banks, and he did 5 years in jail. This guy was a kicker for the Jets, and he sold bogus tax credits, defrauded the IRS, and he had to pay a fine and give back $35 million. And like I said, I could have 10 slides on all people who have been ex-athletes and turned to because they didn't make enough money. Yeah. Brett Favre, he's in a whole lot of trouble for two things. One, so there was money that was supposed to go to people in need for whatever reason. And he got that money and gave it to his university, and they built a volleyball field. Yeah. Then, from the same money, he got paid $1.2 million for 2 speeches. I don't get $1.2 million, trust me. He got $1.2 million for 2 speeches, and he didn't even give the speeches. So he's having to repay that, and he's repaid some, but he is in a lot of trouble. So this is sort of towards the end. Just be careful out there. And I know this is about sports frauds, but be careful yourselves. Only go to registered licensed people. Don't give out your power of attorney. Be careful who you invest with. If people tell you this is guaranteed money, you're going to make 20%, run away as fast as you can. People are out to take your money, and they don't care. And as much as these people are psychopaths, those people are too. So, this is just about my books, but just one part, so you have to watch this part. Oh no, that's it. I thought I had the fireworks. Anyway, thank you all very much. I hope you enjoyed it. Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Did you say that they auctioned off Mickey Mantle?
Yeah, so that.
How much did it get?
Oh, I don't know, but I'm sure a lot. But yeah, that's how somebody bought the bat at an auction, and then they had it tested, and sure enough, there was cork in it.
And also, what could you say to comment about the fact that now that Pete Rose has passed away, he is now eligible to be in the Hall of Fame?
They should have done it while he was alive.
And the last question is, the last comment is, did you know that Calipari bought sculpture out at UMass?
No, I didn't, but he was a very good coach. He still is a good coach. But, he did what he could. Anyway, thank you all very much. If you want to buy a book, I'll sell you. If not, have a good afternoon. You're welcome.